Now that Villainous, I recently just did a video on Batman v Superman, so I might as well do one time about the anticipated Batman v Superman that came out the same year, actually, and that is Captain America Civil War. Which, honestly, a lot of people really compare Batman v Superman, because honestly, those movies are actually not very similar when it comes to concepts, when it comes to like storytelling and certain aspects. It's really just Civil War did all this stuff a lot better than Batman v Superman. And for good reason, because, yeah, Civil War basically did do a lot of stuff better, honestly. Whether it be from the characters, the cast, the story, and the moments, and yeah, so and honestly, I still consider Captain America Civil War to be one of the best MCU movies. Period. It's one that I remember I rewatched so much when it came out. I think it was also another Blu-ray I own actually. That's like the second Blu-ray I own actually behind Paper Town. So it does hold such my heart, honestly. And it was in my top three best movies of that year actually, and I still put it in my top three honestly. Honestly, I think it's actually the best movie of the Captain America trilogy. You know, I obviously do love Winter Soldier, but Civil War again is such an incredible movie that I still love rewatching. So since I did one about Superman, let's do it with Civil War as well. This has now been 10 years, which is again still insane. So let's talk about the greatness of Captain America Civil War 10 years later. Feel free to hit that like and subscribe button if you guys want to see more content like this. And let me know your thoughts on Civil War and its certain aspects of the movie down below in the comment section. So all being said, let's get started. Now I remember going into Captain America Civil War when it came out 2016, and this is kind of around the time I started doing YouTube reviews honestly, and this was gonna be like my first year like consistently trying to do movie reviews and all that stuff. And all that stuff, this was me trying and all that stuff and everything, so but of course, but even before that, I was still definitely a fan of the MCU. I definitely enjoyed all the films that came before that, honestly. And of course, I remember when Age of Ultron came out, I watched that constantly. And Civil War was definitely the start of Phase 3, with Ultron and Ant-Man being the end of Phase 2, obviously. And this was going to be one of the most popular comic book storylines of all time. Again, I'm not really too familiar with the Civil War storyline, but I know it's like a very popular comic book storyline. One that is that they're actually going to adapt live action, or at least do their own interpretation, which is going to be pretty interesting. And the movie basically takes place a little afterwards, onto after the previous events, and it shows a lot of the consequences that happened basically with the previous movies, especially with the Avengers and Age of Ultron and the Winter Soldier and all that stuff. And it's the real back and forth between Steve and Tony. Honestly, but basically they want to send their quarters to help make everything a lot safer and everything. And Tony is like, I think we should do it, honestly. I think we should take responsibility for our actions. It feels like we should be held down like this, obviously. Well, again, I'll definitely come up with this in the next session, honestly, but it just leads to all the conflict between all of them. We'll have a little details, honestly, involving Zemo, who ends up dealing with planning behind the scenes and trying to tear the Avengers apart and everything. Everything over some little incident happens, and Walton, I'm adding in actually two characters that end up getting their own movies. Black Panther in his first live action appearance, and Spider-Man after finally getting the rights from Sony, played by Tom Holland. Again, seeing Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I remember the time when he announced it's like, honestly. And like you mentioned, the film basically has a lot of similarities to Batman and Superman. Actually, like if you actually really think about the films, they actually are very similar in concept, having like two ideologies against each other, having like two people that have like one side, oh they actually think another way, obviously. Have like certain elements with the villains, they were it's always articulate and very, coincidental, where obviously one of those things where, if this plane does if this aspect doesn't work on, so the plane just falls apart. Like it actually gets very convoluted if you actually kind of think about it. If you, the ways that Zemo ends up, having certain things that happen and certain reveals and everything that we'll get into. But yes, Civil War does it a lot better actually. Like I remember there was a point honestly where Marvel was actually better than DC obviously, and I remember like again I some makes Batman Superman and watch that video, but I always thought Civil War was the one that did the story a lot better, honestly. And it's such kind of now sad now that DC is now doing better than Marvel nowadays, which I'm happy about because obviously I'm more big of a DC fan than I've been Marvel. But it's also really sad, honestly, that Marvel was actually a big at the height of the game. Honestly, you had to kind of like took advantage of the audience with the content and everything. But that's the story for another day. That is a story for another day. Yeah, to this day, I still think Captain America: Civil War is still one of the best movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And of course, we get to like the big selling point of this movie, and that is like if you're Team Captain America or your Team Iron Man. And I feel like people are still debating that to this day, actually, like whether or not you're sided with Tony or you're sided with Steve. And one of the best aspects on this movie, honestly, is I do think they do a fantastic job in making you see both sides of the argument. Making you see, like, why Tony's feeling this way. I mean, considering the events going through and everything like that. I mean, this movie poorly, he actually separated Pepper after the events of the previous movies. And he gets like confronted by someone who was like a tragedy of what stuff that happened in the previous movies. All that happened in Stoker and everything like that. Like, proves that stuff that Tony has done obviously has lasting consequences. So you definitely do see his side, honestly. And well, and Steve, honestly, you actually do see his side honestly. Like, they shouldn't be tied down like that, obviously. And also the fact that, he's still doing everything involving Bucky and everything. Like, you do see both sides of what both these characters are coming from. You generally do see both sides of what these characters are going through. And they do a great job of making you see, like, why do it, honestly. And the conflict doesn't really escalate sometimes, and while Tony does see what he was going from, and Steve does see what Tony was going from, obviously, I didn't think at one point I think Tony was he actually was going to sign, honestly, but he ended up backing out on it, and of course, because like, sometimes I want to punch you in your perfect teeth. Again, they do a fantastic job making you see both sides of these characters, and what they're going through, how they're feeling, and why they are feeling the way they do, honestly. It makes you find, like, what side should I be on? What's the best side should I be on? Honestly. And combined up, we also get overall a pretty good cast here. Like I mentioned, I'll do plenty of talk about Zemo and Spider-Man throughout their own videos, honestly. But you also get up here, like you also get Hawkeye here, you also get Scarlet Witch here as well, who also is dealing with the consequences of some things that happened in this movie as well. And the accent's still a bit distracting, honestly, but it's still pretty well done. And of course, we get the hint of a romance with Vision that we will get in, obviously, in Infinity War and Endgame, and also WandaVision. Once Black Widow gets some of her best moments in this movie as well. And of course, Steve is also dealing with the fact that also Peggy died on seeing this movie, and we get a very touching funeral scene as well. Very weird that she ends up kind of like kissing her niece, honestly, but thankfully they got rid of that moment. They got rid of the matter very quickly, obviously, which is like really kissing the niece of the. Yeah, I'm not even gonna bother touching on that, honestly, but especially what they were sharing, and also the fact Winter Soldier, but that's a story for another day. I mean, hell, we even get like Paul Rudd's Ant-Man here appearing as well, which made for some really fun moments as well. Obviously, especially with the effects this movie actually ended up impacting what happened in some events at Ant-Man and the Wasp, actually, which was pretty nice touch. Actually, I'm not gonna lie. Like, yeah, you know, the MCU actually was connected. Again, story for another day. But overall, the cast is pretty solid. Also, again, I do plan to talk about the characters I did mention in their own sections, but overall, the cast is also pretty good as well. Again, like I said, they do a good job making you feel for Tony and feel for Steve and what they're going through, and they do have good sides to each of them. Honestly, I know some people say, "Oh, Steve has no reason to feel like that," but he kind of does, honestly. If you think about it, honestly, especially not just Bucky, obviously, but what he's been through and everything. He's still like new to the world and everything like that. So I definitely do. So yeah, also Falcon here as well, also great as well. Again, the cast is pretty standard, honestly, but they do a good job giving everyone a good amount of screen time. So yeah, good stuff. And then now we get to Zemo, played by Daniel Bruhl. I remember there was a long period of time before Thanos came around in the MCU. For the longest time, I thought that Zemo was probably the best villain in the MCU. Yeah, I'm serious. There was a long time I thought that Zemo was probably the top tier MCU villain. And I still think he's top 5 MCU villain. So this comes to the movies. Obviously, I'm not getting into all the stuff they did with him in Falcon Soldier. But there was a long time I thought he was actually the best villain, actually. I feel like I was one of the only people actually thought that, actually. Because obviously, people thought it was Loki, and all that stuff. And MCU wasn't really known how, like, top tier villains, obviously. Aside from, like, the Winter Soldier himself, Loki, maybe Abomination. Yeah. Yeah, you get my point on that. But yeah, overall, but yeah, Zemo is honestly one of the best villains in the MCU, honestly, because he's not only a very sympathetic figure, obviously, but he's actually a very meticulous actually to what, well, if you think about it, his plan is actually kind of calling Lex Luthor, Batman, Superman, obviously. Like, I know I keep comparing that movie, but again, they're very similar movies. But basically, his plans like more coincidences and certain things that I feel like they need to happen, or ways they fail. But I feel like Zemo was actually more meticulous in that, obviously, and did a good job of him developing his backstory and who he is as a character. Like, you really end up connecting with him, and you end up, like, I don't say that he should do that, honestly, but he does do a great job, honestly, especially with his, like, back with other characters and everything like that, and what causes he ends up causing with certain characters in this movie, and how he actually succeeded with his plan. Yeah, he actually succeeded with plan on tearing the Avengers, which again, I'll talk about that moment later, but he actually succeeded with his plan, which is something, aside from Thanos, can't really think much about the other MCU villains, honestly. He actually succeeded with his plans. And Dan Brewer is a very talented underrated actor that gives him some magnetic charisma as well, so that's as well. Very long listen, as honestly, but he is a great villain. So, I don't know if they're gonna put him in MCU villains, honestly, but he's definitely up there as one of the best. Now we get to the two new additions they decided to add in the movie. As also someone decided to add two new characters that end up feeling more set up to other MCU movies, but unlike, Batman Superman, or opposite that film was just most set up, people don't feel like they actually match the actual story. And of course, Chadwick Boseman, may rest in peace, playing Black Panther, and Tom Holland as Spider-Man, as they finally got the rights to Spider-Man. So let's start with Black Panther first, obviously, because he definitely has some more story significance overall. Because obviously his honestly, that's kind of what's caused him to be Black Panther, obviously, because his convert's going to do like a spoiler and causing end up being caused obviously end up like costing his father's death, which is kind of what Black Panther going on the rampage, obviously. And First Avengers, obviously, and they do a great job in not only building up Chadwick Boseman's character here, making you still feel a relationship with his father and everything, obviously, and going to also know a little detail about Wakanda, obviously, then kind of more expanded, obviously, in the later movies, but yeah, really great stuff in general. Honestly, got really good emotion and got really great back and forth moments, and he's really good in the action set pieces as well, makes you really invested in like what goes on, what's going on with his character and everything. And again, maybe more than another Black Panther, obviously, and they probably could maybe do this more, obviously, and I was fortunate when I actually went through Chadwick Boseman's character in later movies, obviously, but it definitely does a good job making you excited for his own movie, obviously. It's stuff that's obviously set up, but at least it's stuff that actually feels like it's warranted. Like it's okay to maybe like do some steps, obviously, but make sure the steps actually feel warranted to the story. Make sure they're not just there just for the sake of it, which I feel like even the MCU themselves have been guilty of nowadays. It's kind of funny because they're usually more perfect with that, honestly. Like maybe with some exceptions, they usually were great with setting up stuff on. I feel like they actually master the overall story. Like Ultron's probably like the only exception, was one of the underwhelming exception that, but for the most part, the setup actually feel like they actually matched the actual story. I feel like they weren't just there, honestly. And I remember they actually were perfect with that, obviously, but yeah. And of course, we get to Spider-Man. And I remember how hyped this was, honestly, when it's announced that Spider-Man was going to be in Captain America Civil War, because, yeah, Spider-Man is going to finally be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, again, played by Tom Holland, which, it's funny to remember that Tom Holland actually was more of an unknown actor at the time. Well, he's known for Parker now, obviously. Well, he's known for having a voice working in other worlds, obviously. And, well, of course, he now was Uncharted and now other roles, and he's going to be the Odyssey later this year. Like, it's crazy that Tom Holland was one of the actors that actually was everywhere, obviously, in like the late 2010s to like the early 2020s, obviously. He was an actor that was like in a lot of different movies and everything. But it's crazy that before Civil War, he was kind of an unknown actor. I think the only roles he was known via was in, I think he played a role in his 2012 movie called The Impossible. That was directed by Jerry Barnett, the guy who did Monster Calls and Fallen Kingdom. And he actually had a role in The Heart of the Sea, that underwhelming Ron Howard that came out in 2015 that I'm sure a lot of you guys kind of forgot about. Again, you check out my 2015 tier rating, you guys want to know my thoughts on that movie. But again, he was kind of an unknown actor at the time, honestly. It's a lot to think about, but he was kind of an unknown actor, honestly. And now he's like one of the biggest stars out there, honestly. And, I mean, obviously for good reason, and he is very talented, obviously. But it's kind of funny when you think about it, honestly. And I'm casting him as Spider-Man. And they do a good job with integrating him to the actual story, where honestly, see him just being learning about Spider-Man, and then seeing him with Aunt May, played by Mr. Tomei. Again, this kind of saw the whole like hot Aunt May kind of memes and jokes, and Tony wanted to bang her, which is kind of funny when you actually think about it. But that's a story for another. Again, that's a story for another day. And in which people ends up going to an internship and everything, but turns out he didn't, and he wants to be a part of it, and to see like a lot of that stuff and everything, and wants to, and he ends up seeing a lot of potential in Peter Parker and everything. And we get some little fun nods, obviously, avoiding the nerdiness and the stuff that you expect from Spider-Man and the quips that you expect, obviously, which will maybe promote MCU kind of thing, honestly. It really works here, actually. And again, and you really can see the emphasis of the Tony and Pete relationship that has become like a big part of basically the remainder of the MCU movies. I mean, hell, this kind of was the reason why Tony decided to help out the gang, honestly, in Avengers Endgame. It's because of Peter. And again, it is a great scene. And it gets great moments, again, really great moments, and see him in the actual airport sequence is just fun. His quips, of course, even referencing Empire Strikes Back is still pretty hilarious as well. And while and it kind of gets a little premature, obviously. At least get a post-credit scene at least, so that's good at least, and looks like we're going to see Spider-Man more, obviously. Well, of course, his later films, obviously, and become very divisive, obviously, because like, oh, that's not Spider-Man, there's no way, like, all that stuff, but I think it's a good job, obviously. Well, I would actually I would say I still prefer Tom McGuire's portrayal as a character. Tom Holland's definitely close second, obviously, and I definitely cannot see what they do with Peter Parker in Brandon Day, especially after the difference of No Way Home. But yeah, Black Panther and Spider-Man were both incredible additions. And now we get to, of course, my favorite moments of Civil War, and of course, the action, which I think a lot of us can agree is definitely the highlight of Captain America Civil War. I mean, we start pretty strong, honestly, we definitely do start pretty strong. And we see, like, the Crossbones appear, obviously, and we see, like, Steve, Black Widow, Scarlet Witch, and Falcon beating them up, obviously, and all that stuff, and then and again, we get some bad moments and Scarlet Witch moments, which of course, all that stuff ends up showing a lot of stuff, which kind of leads to basically what goes on and everything. We get like some like Hawkeye, Vision, and Scarlet Witch action sequence as well. We get some little like action sequence before the airport sequence with all the characters and everything, and again, Black Panther. We also get some higher chasing Black Panther as well. But of course, we can't talk so well. We're talking about two of the most iconic sequences in this movie, which I think all agree are basically the best sequences, not just of this movie, but of the entire MCU. I still, despite all the MCU, I would still have these moments probably in my top 10, honestly. Like, both would still make my top 10 best MCU moments. Like, that's somewhere down the road I do plan on, somewhere down the road I do plan on redoing my top 10 best MCU moments list, honestly. I'm not so sure when I'm going to get that video out, honestly, but I guess we'll see how that goes. But I will definitely keep you updated once I get that video out, but just know that those moments probably would still likely be in the top 10. And for good reason. Of course, the two moments I'm talking about are, the first off, the airport battle, with we have Team Tony and Team Steve, and their adventures fighting against each other. Obviously, because of the whole, like, frustrations with what's going on and everything, and, like, getting towards, like, I'm trying to keep tearing the Avengers apart. You saw that when he signed. Which again, it's a lot of emotion, but the movie is just like dumb fun, obviously. But it's the perfect dumb superhero fun, obviously. Like, it's kind of like fan service, but done in a good way, obviously, where you see a lot of characters like doing the best, honestly, with the action and the back and forth, honestly, and like giving some fun between like Hawkeye and Black Widow. Like, we're still good, right? Depends on how much you hear me. I mean, and again, the action is just great. Like, a lot of different little moments, a lot of different quips. Again, like Spider-Man reference the Empire Strikes Back as well. Still pretty hilarious. And again, Ant-Man turned to Giant Man and all that stuff. Like, a lot of different things. It's just so much fun to watch. It just put a big grin on your face. And still one of the best action set pieces in the entire MCU for sure. And it ends in a pretty emotional climax as well. And it ends up in a pretty emotional climax as well. And then, of course, we get to see Steve and Bucky trying to figure everything and all that stuff, and you end up going to kind of keep the female, and then Tony's like, and they decide to call a truce because to catch his email. And then we get to a very interesting mode, obviously. It turns out, Bucky, who was brainwashed, by the way, was responsible for the death of Tony Stark's father. And Steve knew about it. Which I think is definitely one of the devices actors honestly, but I thought it works pretty well actually, and through the walls that little convenient how it plays out, obviously. It's still pretty effective. You can really feel the emotion. Like, again, Rob Downey Jr., like, say what you will about him, but he always delivers as these characters. He always lives in these roles, honestly, with the emotion. And Civil War is definitely one of his best parts. Like, definitely not, Infinity War Endgame level, but it's definitely up there. Like, the emotion really just, oh man. Like, you really do generally feel a lot of the emotion that goes on with this scene, obviously, and when Steve just, Tony just, again, as much as I love it, and as much as I adore about the airport fight, like I mentioned earlier, this is actually I always preferred, actually. It's because they're just the pure emotion, so you really can feel the pure emotion between Tony and Steve and everything, what they're going through and what he's feeling, and of course, you get the highlight, but, and then, and then he's like, he's my friend. And Thor's like, so was I. I could do this all day. A lot of different lines that just really just hit home, honestly, and just really filled with so much emotion. And you just can't help but feel touched and just heartbroken a lot of times. Especially when how the sequence ends and everything, and how they just bridge arc for a while. That kind of was led to a lot of the events happening in later movies, obviously, as to, well, kind of good, obviously, and kind of just Infinity War, then kind of not, honestly. So, it leaves a lot of different backward emotions and just backward like conflicts and everything, and it's just yeah, you really just end up feeling a lot from this movie. And again, basically just ends up into a lot of the crazy stuff that happens in later movies, and like it's basically the antithesis of what happens in Infinity War and Endgame, obviously. And as again, the villain actually wins. He actually wins. Like it's always so bright when you realize the villain. Oh yeah, the villain actually wins here. He actually just he's playing to tear the Avengers apart. For it's a long term very conflict, a long ago for the ownership has some later movies. Obviously, some don't even know the Avengers actually end up being apart. Which is kind of interesting as you think about it, but but those my favorite moments. But again, my favorite moments obviously would be obviously Spider-Man sequences, again Black Panther's a lot of stuff obviously. The match war between Steven and Black Widow up to that the back between Steven and Black Widow throughout the movie, also that funeral scene, that scene where basically calls you like, okay, I know I miss you, but you can't keep doing this. And it's like you're saying you're a recipe? Like the conflict really does add a lot of motion and tension to this movie, obviously, and Scarlet Witch ends up becoming a lot more interesting character in this movie as well, obviously, because of how she feels about what happened earlier, obviously, and hinting relationship with Vision as well. And then, and again, but again, those two scenes I mentioned, but again, those two moments, the airport battle, and the fight between Captain America and Bucky versus Tony, are moments that are going to be high up on my MCU best moments. If I were to read it out, like I think I did do, I did do that list back in 2019, obviously, where I did a top 50 best MCU moments. I think I probably would have changed the list. Obviously, now we got a lot more movies that came out. That moments that probably would be on that list, but again, again though. That is definitely from that day. I think that's pretty much all I can really say about Captain Marvel. Again, I do think it's a better movie than Batman Superman in every conceivable way, honestly. And I actually say Civil War to be one of the best MCU movies. So a great start to Phase 3, obviously, which definitely is a big up and down phase, if you really think about it. But it's the most consistently good one, honestly, with really damn good movies, obviously, and fantastic ones as well. Again, has some of the best moments in the MCU. It has great setup, has great conflict that really keeps you invested. Again, people still debate whether they are Team Tony or Team Iron Man. I mean, Team Steve or Team Tony, because it is really that great component of a conflict. The action is really incredible here. The music, the storytelling, and definitely the fight here too is a little bit from the actual comics, but it does enough honestly from that storyline as well. And again, those are so many gasming and awesome moments. They just can't help but smile and feel great whenever you're on screen. Could do without, the Steve kissing Sharon, though, obviously, but other than that, I still consider Civil War to be one of the best movies in the MCU for sure. And still, my opinion, the best of the Captain America trilogy. In my opinion, though, I do adore Winter Soldier, obviously. But Civil War just holds its much close to my heart. And it was actually one of the first blues I actually ever bought. Obviously, I watched it so many times when it came out. Again, hard to, and it was a film that just means a lot to me. Again, it was actually my top 3 of last year, obviously. I knew a couple times in live streams back then. I would just say, "Hey, it's my favorite, actually my favorite movie," honestly. But as much as ultimately, honestly, I think about I'm obviously, you guys know, Civil War Arrival a lot, and I will actually be also put it in my top two. But Civil War is definitely still on top three for sure. It's a film that will always hold a special place in my heart. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm sure I did. So let me know your thoughts on Civil War down below in the comment section. Let me know what are your favorite moments, what are your favorite memories watching this movie, obviously. Or if you're someone that does like this movie, let me know down below. I know something I actually do like this movie, obviously, but if you don't, let me know. Honestly, let's have a nice, healthy discussion down below, obviously. I hope you all enjoyed this video. It's crazy it's not been 10 years the movie came out. What the heck? Like, let's show for another day. Anyways, I'm Sam World, Sam Productions. I will see you next time. As always, stay cool about D and spreading positivity your way. Peace.